bring to the board tonight? Okay, we'll move right on to the consent agenda then. On the consent agenda, we have the minutes from 18 April. We have media packets, some grants, and staff changes, all that are attached. Would anyone like to pull any of these items off the consent agenda for discussion or change? Okay, if not, if there's no objections, these items will be adopted. Are there any objections? These items are adopted as part of the consent. Item 6, old business is gone. Item 7, new business, renewal of the audit contract, which is attachment 7A. Somebody like to speak to that?
Yes, I can speak to that. So I'm looking for approval to renew the contract with Cattell, Brannigan, and Sargent for 1 more year. And the reason being that they were instrumental in our closing out of the old school districts into the new MRUSD. And I would like the consistency for them to come in and make sure that all the closeouts carried forward properly in the new MRUSD. They are suggesting a decrease in the contract amount based on the decrease of the workload, but that I will absolutely put it out for bid for the following year, because at that point then we would be through the whole transition process of the consolidation.
Okay, I make a motion to renew the audit contract with Cattell, Brannigan, and Sargent for next fiscal year for the audit.
For a second? Second that. Jeff? Questions and discussions?
So this is for 2 audits now?
It's for MRUSD and Collins Pearly, correct.
So there's no requirement that these audits have to be competitively bid?
They do if the contract, renewal of a contract is either more than the NEAP from the prior year, or the amount is over 35% of the original contract issued, and it doesn't fit either of those criteria.
There's no time limit?
No.
So could we extend beyond 8 of them? Is that what you're saying?
Depends on what they would bid for following.
Right. Next year I will put it out. I will put it out to bid just so that we can get a competitive quote, seeing as how we'll be a new district without having to deal with all the transition stuff in it.
Makes sense. And it's less, they've reduced it because less reports?
Less reports, less financial reports.
So
although they do
all
have
the same dollars, but
right.
Just less reports.
Just less reports, less financial statements that have to be created.
More dollars than last year.
Hey, Albert, did you eat this
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, who's at Al's house?
I think you just got the answer.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the motion to renew the contract indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 9-0.
Thank you.
Approved. Item C, we have 1 staff issue, unpaid leave request.
No, yes, this is a request for 6 days of unpaid leave that the administration does support.
Okay, and we have it in our attachments.
Yes.
7B1.
7C1.
Did you just skip B?
Did I skip one?
You skipped
You did. 7B1.
7B. Just
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yes, B.
Thank you, thank
Sorry.
you, thank you, thank you. 7B administrator contracts, because that's certain to lead into some evaluation conversations. I think it does belong in executive session. It does meet the criteria. We do have to have a finding for that, though.
I'll make a motion for that finding.
Okay.
Under the, I forget the numbers,
Yeah, it's labor relations agreements.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. And that's because it's evaluation, yeah.
And on premature knowledge of the public would do this.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we're okay.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of moving that to executive session, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that'll go to executive session, 9-0. Now we're to staff issues. Thank you for that, Mike. We have the attachment, everybody has read it. And this is a para?
This is a pair.
Right, and that's why she needs our approval, because it would be,
She's used up all her leave days, and so she's requesting 6 additional unpaid days.
okay. So we've done that,
Yeah.
certainly done that before. Look for a motion so we can discuss.
I'll make a motion
Thank you,
to
Mike.
do those days.
Second?
I'll second.
Everybody good with that? You've read it?
Just for clarity, 7B1 and goes with 7C1, is that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, just making sure.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion on that, look for a motion, or look for, we'll call a vote, excuse me. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Approved 9-0.
Let's do a quick meeting.
I meant to add that most of the principals are here in the facility. They're just in another room doing business. They had some work they needed to do all together. And since they're all here, I thought it would be a good use of time. So that's why they're not here tonight. So they are here. They're just not in the room. If we need one of them or more of them, we can go get them. Okay, item 8, other business. We have some warrants.
Motion to approve the warrants.
Thank you, Mike.
Second that.
Thank you, Jack. Any discussion on the warrants? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 9-0. Warrants are approved. Brings us to administrator's report.
Good evening, everybody. You have the newsletter attached. Once again, thanks to Brenda for compiling that. This is what, our 3rd month?
Yes.
We weren't sure how it was going to work. It's been very successful, and we're able to get stuff in there about each school, which is wonderful. And I think the best part is all the school district is seeing it, which they hadn't before. So they're able to get a better idea of this communication as to what's going on throughout the district. So again, thank you, Brenda, for that.
How is this disseminated to everyone?
Through electronic.
Yeah, I emailed it to MRUSD all, and I posted on the website, which also goes on our Facebook page.
In other news, we talked at our last meeting or the meeting before about the definition of equity and had a great discussion about it, and it was suggested that it be put up. You see an approximation of what this will look like, and that we will be putting it up under our mission. We're not quite there yet. We're looking to actually do it up and look a little bit more classy. But I think it was a great idea, and we're working on that aspect now. But we thought it was worthwhile to at least put it up for you to see. And Brenda's working on some borders and things like that for it. The only other thing I have, and I feel like I talk about this a lot during this season, but please keep informed of what's going on in our legislature. As of yesterday, we have a brand new proposal out there from our governor of pretty much 5 or 6 different bullet points of things he wants to do. And it's important to just read it. There's a major thing in the paper today about it. Michelle Monroe did an article, and Emerson also did an editorial on it. So interesting things, not a lot of new surprises, but a lot of interesting things, some which I think can be positive and some that I think can be extremely hurtful to the district and all districts, especially around staffing ratios. But we'll see where it goes.
I noticed the VSBA, one of their letters talked about open meeting law. As the VSA looked at it, considered those changes. The change would entail that a board member emailing one board member would be public, and it is, but stuff would be redacted or something to that effect. I'm not really clear on it. But the email between superintendent and individual board member would have a different status than if it was sent to the whole board. So that the whole board gets the email, it's public.
Yeah.
So I don't know if your group has talked about that. And,
to be honest,
I mean, they're back and forth on it, Kevin.
Yeah.
And that,
this is VSBA. The VSBA.
VSBA was in their legislative thing, and
The one that's not today?
no, yes, the last one before. And you go to their page, and she's testifying against
Nicole Holmes.
Nicole Mensch. Yeah, she's testifying against it. But it caught my eye because it's open meeting law. You're messing with it again. And
To be honest, I don't know about that.
Okay.
I'll look into that. It hasn't come up. I have a trustees meeting on Friday, and it may come up then.
yeah. Oh, legislature may forget about it by then too.
They have so much on their plate right now.
I think the conservative thought is that anytime you put something in email, you could see it in the newspaper. And I think we saw that with the Burlington School Board around Easter time. They had a bunch of their emails in the newspapers.
Okay.
So,
Yes. Any questions on any of those? I'm sure we'll hear more about the governor's proposal, but it's so new.
Twist. Okay, you can pass the warrants.
I am.
Okay, we have board administrator handouts.
I'll pass those up to
Okay, and then we'll go into administrator's reports. So let's start with Michelle.
Well, speaking of legislation, there's been the miscellaneous changes to the education law, which is currently Senate Bill 257, has been bouncing in and out of different committees and has had many, many different iterations that don't even look alike. Very different iterations throughout the course of this legislative session. The current bill mainly keeps everything mostly the same. It's in Act 166 right now. So the schools would be administering tuition vouchers for partner sites, largely unchanged from everything that we do right now. The big change in there is that they're proposing for kids that are in full-day programs or receiving more than 20 hours a week of preschool, that we be allowed to count them as a 0.7 ADM. Right now, we can count students as a 0.46 ADM for 10 hours a week.
Michelle, can you just mention what ADM is?
Yeah, that's the average daily membership, which is the student count when it goes into a big funding formula at the state pre-K 12. So it's important to us because we have between, well, in this district by itself, we have over 70 slots for full-day pre-K with the preschool expansion grant. And if we're going to be able to sustain that, we're going to need some to be able to count the kids. And they're there as long as kindergarten students are right now, but they only count for a little bit less than a half of a student. So that's what's in there now. There is concern from the child care community. I was on a conference call Monday night that the public schools are trying to put them out of business. There's a concern that if we're able to count kids for a full ADM and they're only able to get a voucher that's worth 10 hours a week, that it's inequitable. And from the years that I've been doing this, I know this was a concern when Act 166 came around too. And what we find is that families that are accessing the school-based programs are usually different families than those that are accessing our tuition funding and going to partner sites. The families going to partner sites, that's a portable voucher, so that a lot of times they're bringing kids close to their workplaces with them. Usually they're dual working families that need full day, full year childcare, which we don't do. We're 8 to 2 during the school calendar. So I did a quick survey yesterday, really quick survey. We got 67 responses back, so a pretty good response rate considering it went out yesterday afternoon at like 1 and the kids were dismissed at 2. But I had teachers like grabbing people at pickup and we were calling families. And 89.5% of the kids, the families in our full day program said that they would not be able to access childcare in a partner site or another place. And they cited transportation, that they just don't need full day, full year programming, and some of those things. Some of them live in communities where there aren't any pre-qualified programs, so the school's it. So I think that it kind of shows what I thought we were going to see. We did send that information off to the state, to different people, people that are representing the special ed directors and different public school people, and they did integrate that into their testimony today. So we'll see where it goes. The other thing that I just recently have been working is writing and rewriting the preschool expansion grant. So that's in again, and we should be hearing soon for our 4th and final year of that. We're also working on screening. We have screenings going on in all of the communities for kids for next year, and getting really busy with all of our transition to kindergarten meetings, trying to get kids ready for that. June 6th, we're partnering with the rec department and doing, they have a touch the truck day over at the municipal lot over by City School. So we're going to do that with them and run some tables and activities for kids besides the trucks. And I think that's all I have. Oh, I wanted you guys to know too, we have a Franklin County Early Childhood Programs Facebook page, and we have for a while. But if you ever want to see what's happening, different classrooms post pictures as long as we have permission from families, and just quick blurbs of what's happening in their classrooms. So it's a way, we're not a school, so we don't have announcements. You might see us in some of the announcements, but that's our way to get information kind of out about what we're doing.
I would just like to add to Michelle, sometimes I may come off critical of some of our legislative acts are out there. The one she talked about, 257, I certainly hope passes because they've done a lot of good homework on it, and it's righted some wrongs that have happened the first time that went out, with some really positive things for the school district financially, but also around licensing and things like that for our teachers. So I'm hoping it passes. We've been keeping very close eyes on it, and it's in the House committee right now, and we'll know in a couple days, but it'll be very helpful if it goes through.
Helpful with public schools. There's really not a lot of changes to the childcare community in it, but yeah, the separation of we would not have to file a childcare license anymore, the AOE would regulate us is the other big change in there. Mm-hmm. That would be beneficial for some of the duplicative hoops we have to jump through.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Jill?
Yes. Hi, can you see me okay? I did just want to give you an update on the continuous improvement plan that we talked about last time. We were together at the central office, have a little celebration our continuous improvement plan was submitted to the Agency of Education, and I was on pins and needles just wondering if our plan was going to be approved. And part of the reason why it was so cumbersome this year is because there's a new platform. So there was quite a few technical glitches that everyone across the state was experiencing. So that was pretty time consuming and a lot of work, and I know that other people who are working on it in the curriculum departments are pretty anxious, but the celebration is that ours came back and that we've been approved. And not only is ours approved, but we've had really positive feedback on the areas that we're working on. So just to remind you, we're going to go over this in June together anyway, but our 4 areas that we're working on as a district are math, reading, writing, meeting the needs of the whole child, and so the social emotional piece, and also high quality professional development. So they were quite impressed with the work that we're doing in all of our schools, so I just wanted to bring that back to you so that you're aware of that.
Great. Nice job. Question? Kathy?
The HR group has been busy with teacher contracts. All of the teachers have returned contracts at this point. We do have about 10 new extensions. Those will be settled by May 11th. I was wondering why it felt so busy this time of year. We have 53 either professional staff or support staff that have retired, resigned, or being given a leave, or had a one-year-only contract. So those all have to be posted, replaced, or not. We had 12 reductions in staff, professional support, and 11 transfers. So we have, because we're one district now, someone who is interested in a position in another school can ask to be transferred if there's an opening, one of those retirements or resignations. So we actually have designed a spreadsheet so we can keep on top of this, and every time the administrative group meets, we update the worksheet so that we can keep track of what we call vacancies, new additions. I think we only have 1 new addition, reductions, potential reductions, because this is the place on the spreadsheet where we'll be able to talk about efficiencies.
Good.
And transfers. And it's a little overwhelming with the number of switches people are making, but I think that's part of our growing pains. People are looking at us as one district, so it's become a little bit of a challenge for all of us as administrators to keep up with this. But it's a good process, and I think that that's working for us. We're also in the process, we have a 10-member committee looking at applications for Director of Special Ed. That will meet on Monday, and hopefully we'll move forward with that process. And
Who's on that committee?
we have an elementary special educator from SATEC, an elementary special educator from Fairfield, 2 special educators from the high school, principal, business manager, assistant special ed director. Who am I forgetting?
You.
Myself. So there's 10 of us.
Any other questions?
So you have how many teachers? Special ed teachers? 4? You said SATEC special educators. You have 4 teachers out of 12, 10?
Out of the 10.
Yeah, that's
Well, 10
what
members.
I'm wondering how many teachers are on there. That's what makes it- Yeah,
4.
thank you.
Are there a lot of applicants?
Business manager, HR.
Yeah, no, I just,
Principal. Oh, and Chris Moscow, high school principal.
Are there a lot of applicants?
Under 10. It's a tough time of year.
It's slim.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk our own list.
I already been down that road. Give it a shot.
So we've contacted everyone in the state. It's on School Spring. We've advertised it through Council of Exceptional Children, Ed Week.
Word of mouth.
And a lot of word of
Lot of
mouth,
word of mouth.
everyone talking to their professional groups.
Well, this is for July 1st start date, right?
Yes.
So what's the license requirement for that position?
It's an administrative license,
It's a director of special.
director of special education license.
Okay, so it's a special license, it's not, they don't have to be a principal or?
Usually, people can have a principal superintendent, not have a special ed director license, but a lot of the coursework is very similar, but the required experience is at least 3 years as a special educator.
Or special education experience.
Special education experience, and we'd like to see someone with some administrative experience.
How many people did you say transferred?
11.
Transferred?
11.
Yes.
Feels like one.
So not even a year into it, people are already looking at us like we're one this one.
Oh, yeah,
Most
definitely.
definitely.
Yeah.
That's encouraging.
Some of them are transferring even within their own school, but some are across schools.
And I got another one just today.
How many are across schools?
2, 3, 4, 5, about half.
Are these like secret, or can you talk about them? What, I mean,
Nothing secret.
I understand that. It's just, it's kind of interesting because we all know people at the schools, teachers at the different schools, and it's kind of interesting that this is happening. I think it's a good thing.
So for instance, a transfer from BFA to a 7-8 position at SACS. A position from SACS from one classroom to an interventionist position. From a behavior specialist to a special educator. A regular special ed position to a special ed behavior specialist. An administrator to a teaching position. A shared position between two schools to working at one school in a position. That's about a lot of them are similar but different, going from a specialist position to a classroom position, or from a classroom position to a specialist position.
Or they just like to try a different building.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Move on. Let's go to Julie.
So, there's been a lot going on with the hiring too. A lot of those 11 are mine. And I think it has definitely been interesting keeping up with them and really working with folks who are really wanting to take a risk or try something new, which is exciting to see them want to grow professionally. And so far, everything has been a great circumstance, so somebody would be a perfect fit here. And everybody seems to be happy. So it's been a great experience for the educators. And in the end, it really has, I think, in many ways, allowed us to think creatively about how we can find efficiencies, where maybe we don't need to replace something occasionally if we shift something around. And also just seeing a reduction in having to go outside for some of these positions that if you are in special education, when you advertise for special educators, you tend to get folks right out of college, which is great, it's the work. But some of our positions that open up, you really are looking for a veteran because it's a situation where you want someone with more experience, and we're getting that through a transfer process. So it's been a really good, as Kathy said, a little eye-opening, but it has been a good process. So there's been a lot of hiring. I have a couple still left to iron out, but we're finishing up that process. Also been paying attention to the legislature around special ed, the special ed funding bill that's been going on. There's some language in there that people are a little concerned about independent schools, but in general, our organizations support that bill and the move to a different way of funding special education through a block grant rather than a reimbursement model. And that will allow us to use money a little more flexibly, have less time spent on documentation of how money is spent, less bureaucracy. And also, I think the reimbursement model has led to the growth of special ed spending in some ways. That's certainly one of the theories out there. If you have only so many dollars in your checking account and no one's going to reimburse you for overspending, you tend not to. So I think we're in support of this change. It's going to be a change that happens over time, and it's going to be something that impacts general education more than special education, really, because it's going to be a shift in how we use dollars and how we use staff. But it's, from what I understand, it's some version of this bill will exist, will come out.
So Julie, when you mentioned that a lot of those people are yours, they're in your department, I'm assuming
the
that's what you
transfers?
meant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so based on your experience, have some of them come to you? Does that happen? Are you sometimes part of the process of deciding if the choice they're talking about is a good choice? You know, does that flow through your office in that respect? Or
well, I've been involved.
I can picture people making bad choices perhaps sometimes too.
Well, we were worried about that when we talked about transfer anyway, when we became a new district. So it's very important that you put in a request, that your administrator knows about that request. I'm interested in this opening here, and that it becomes part of the interview process.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at candidates on School Spring, and I'm looking at people who are interested in transferring, and we're looking at best fit.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Everybody's involved. Yeah.
So Julie, you mentioned that as you're doing this and reloading, if you will, you're finding efficiencies, or you're rethinking about how you're going to utilize your resources.
Mm-hmm.
So as you find efficiencies, I think you should document them so that we have records. So as we go through the year and as we try and drive this home a little more, you can say this is where we saved money and we did this, this, and this. Just so it doesn't get lost, I guess is what I'm saying.
Certainly.
Yep.
That's another thing I've been doing, is trying to document some things for the next person coming in. And so that would be another example of some of the changes and shifts we've made, why we made them. Can add those into the list, just so. I have chart paper, but nobody understands it but me.
It's also one of the reasons why we
have a spreadsheet.
Document,
Yes.
a spreadsheet, so we can look at it now for the first time ever. It's memorialized.
Yeah.
We can show where those things have happened.
There's definitely places on our spreadsheet where you'll have, when you're first contemplating, if I make this move, or if this person transfers, or if this person resigns, do we need to fill that position? So it may start off with a question mark.
Yep.
And then you shift it to, no, we need to replace it, or no, we're not going to replace. And that's all in that spreadsheet.
Aren't we also on the hook to the Department of Ed for like an annual report on how the merger is showing efficiencies? Seems I remember that as part of the incentives, part of the
I don't believe so.
I thought we were.
But I think it's going to be really important to be able to demonstrate, you know, we saved $4,000 on the audit this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we saved $10,000, because otherwise, we're still asking the question, where have we saved money?
Yep. Don't forget that just at our last meeting, you saw $1 million that was documented. We've already stated that. We have, that's how we're doing it. We're keeping track of that as they go along.
Sure.
Because Sue's right, we need to be able to show that.
So are you saying that you look at internal transfers first and then external transfers, or all together at once?
It's pretty much done. Every team, every principal may set up their interviews differently, but they're essentially looked at simultaneously. So you're looking at applicants from all over the country, or the world even, on School Spring, and then you're looking at any requests you have internally, and then you decide who to interview.
And then the contract does specify that you look at internal candidates before you look at external.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I was going to say, what is it? Because it sounds like you're looking at everyone all together.
Well, we always post things internally
Okay.
for 7 days, and then we might also post on School Spring, and that usually takes about a week before you get applicants.
Right.
Or we wait a few days after we've posted internally. It's required by the contract, and it gives internal candidates an opportunity to look at what's happening in the district and to see if they're interested.
I don't think I've had a circumstance yet this year where that's been a conflict. I think it's just naturally happened that the internal transfer request comes sooner.
So, but to be clear, the requirement is just that you give them a head start.
Consider,
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a priority
Right.
when you have two
You're not
individuals.
But I would say, all things being equal, we will most likely go with the internal candidate if we feel it's something it's appropriate, it's a good fit, it will be a good thing for that person, but there's still a competitive process.
And then it just changes what positions open.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's the
That's the whole,
That's
that's
the
the spreadsheet.
I'm looking for the first grade
Yes.
teacher.
Yes.
So then we're having the conversations, do we keep adding fields on the same line, or do we add more positions? You know, it's not more positions because it's just the domino effect, so trying to track it.
Anything else for Julie? Thank you, Julie. Joanne, like to talk about truancy?
No.
Anything?
I have some other things I can talk about.
Sure.
Well, so the usual work, very busy this time of year, transitions, the 8th to 9th grade. I've been doing a lot of work with the community partners as well, so that would be Department of Children and Families, Northwest Counseling, and also Northeastern Family Institute. And one of the projects we're about to begin is reviewing adoption data back several years, because there seems to be a trend in failed adoptions as children get older. So we're going to be looking at that. What does that have to do with us? It has a lot to do with us because it affects educational stability for these kids. It also has a financial impact if the needs are so great that we can't serve them in our schools. So that's a project about to begin. Kevin and I have been meeting with Bob Thayer and Nina Curtis from the Restorative Justice Center and looking at what they might offer to our schools to really determine how we could partner with them in a way that that addresses the discipline system, but in a way that it's holding kids accountable and that they can learn from the situations that they create. So, and Heather has also been involved with DFA in that conversation, and the K-8 schools are already doing some form of this. So I'm really excited about that. That's been a long time coming. And the other thing that, in terms of my other jobs, I'm working with I'm on the, as you know, the state, what's called the State Act 264 board, and that's about coordinating services for our kids between those agencies I just mentioned, and education, and we are working on updating the process of the documentation in a meeting format to help coordinate services when there are a lot of services involved with families or needed to address needs, issues, supports, coming together to make the documentation form that we utilize a lot more streamlined and coordinated. So that's exciting work as well. And I'm the Vermont Council of Special Ed Directors representative on that board. So this documentation or this process, the new form has gone out to all the special ed directors to receive feedback, and then I'll present our portion of that feedback at the next board meeting. So, not much going on.
Questions?
I have one. What triggered the study for failed adoption in this area?
So the process, the coordinated service plan process, they sit on the local interagency team, which is like there's school teams or the agency teams that come together and try to coordinate services for kids, and when that's not working, it comes to the next level, which is the local interagency team executive committee, and I'm the ed rep on that committee. And so we were just noticing a trend in families coming to those teams and saying, help, we can't manage this child any longer. And so these are oftentimes kids who were adopted at age 2, 3, 4, and now they're 10, 11, 12, 13, and their behaviors are just so that the adopted families aren't able to manage them. So, and it's just, again, we just noticed a trend on the exec committee.
Why is it considered a failed adoption though? I mean, they're still adopted kids, right?
Well,
or
in some cases.
Or do they give them up?
In some cases, they give them up. Okay. So it's an opportunity to take a deeper dive and see what's really going on here.
And are those kids already identified though? It sounds like you already have those kids identified because they're in their system, or are they brand new kids that just kind of enter there?
They're kids that, both, sometimes in the system. I gotta point out too that they're not just Maple Run kids, because the local interagency team, that exec committee, that's a Franklin County committee. So they could be from any community in Franklin County.
And what's going to be the end product of this study? Is there going to be a report? Is there going to be some kind of...
That would be my hope, that we identify if there are trends and where the needs are. Are we lacking in resources? We try to keep kids in the community. What do we need to be able to keep kids in the community and to support those families? Is there a lack of... One of my questions would be, is there a lack of in education for a family when they say we want to adopt? Do they know what they're really getting into? Because these are kids from severe trauma, oftentimes.
So if there is a report or graphs or trends or something, I think it would be appropriate to share with us.
Okay.
I think there's interest in it, right? I know I'd like to see it.
Okay.
It would be good for the community to see it too. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, one more question. So from the action from that, like after the report, is there going to be action taken from it, or is it just a study being done, or I guess what would happen after the report came out?
So I'm not sure about that. We're meeting next week, and that would be a great question for me to ask. One of the avenues that I can see that this goes to is that Act 264 board, the state board that I sit on, because that is it's a collective of parent advocates, Department of Mental Health, Department of Children and Families, designated mental health agencies. So that would be a great place to take this back to say in Franklin County, here's what we found. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I could, is that shared throughout the state then as well, so we can compare other counties to see whether
so that's bringing it back to that state board. That's where a decision like that would be made. And I personally, I would report back to the Vermont Council of Special Ed Directors.
How long is the study going to take?
I have no idea. We haven't even we just said we got to do this. When can we meet to start planning what we're going to do and how we're going to do it? And that's next week. So talk to me in 2 weeks.
Okay.
I'll have a better idea.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thanks, Joanne. Martha.
Saving me for last. So, there's a few things that I'm working with besides business office, working with the contract for all the school staff. I'm actually I sit on a committee for what's called the Uniform Chart of Accounts. So in legislature last year, they passed a law that said that all school districts will be using the same chart of accounts throughout the state. And so there was a group from my VASBO group, the Vermont Association of School Business Officials, that has stepped up to work with AOE to come up with a uniform chart of accounts that has to be put in place by July 1st of 2019. And what that is just account codes that we use to report all of our expenditures and revenues through, for the state. And so I'm working on that committee. And I think in the next 4 weeks, I think we have 4 meetings set up. So it's kind of a mad dash to get the chart of accounts set in place so that the school districts that are currently in transition from a merged district or to a merged district, so they can set up their accounts properly. So I'm working on that committee. I'm also following what's happening at the legislature, and specifically on the shared school district data management system that's out there, which is financial accounting software. And right now there is, about a year ago, the state went out to do an RFP with the support of VASBO to ascertain a bid for statewide financial software, or a financial software package that any school district, when they needed, or if they needed to get a new software program, because with all these mergers, that's been a big push in the last couple of years. And so the state went out, put out an RFP, they got bids back, and over the last probably the last month, the bid was awarded, and school districts that were transitioning had the opportunity to take this bid, so they didn't have to go out and do the whole RFP process. And recently in the legislature, they're talking about mandating that all school districts move to this single statewide data management system. Right now, they're talking about having it mandated that everybody transitions by 2020 to this system. So I'm watching that very closely. And, you know, if it's mandated, we'll do what we need to do. Otherwise, I was kind of waiting to see how they transitioned the districts that had to move to this system, because they're in flux, to see, because it's being managed by Agency of Education, those transitions haven't always gone very smoothly, so I was kind of waiting to see how it goes. So it'll be interesting to find out if that mandate actually comes to fruition, or if it's going to be, because it originally was an opt-in or opt-out type of situation.
And do we know what the cost of migrating to this data management software?
The legislature put money in place to pay for the cost of transitioning to that new software program. So it's no cost to the school district. And they actually have funding in place for the first year of support afterwards. That's all the money is available as of right now. They're talking about if they mandate it, then they would make the funding come from the ed fund prior to education spending money. So it's something we're looking at. Pardon?
What's the impact of that coming from the ed fund before?
Then it raises taxes, because they got to cover that cost. And otherwise, if it comes out of the ed fund, then every school district is paying for it, whether you're in that program or not in that program. Yeah.
And do we have a data management software package now that we're using?
We do. We're
happy with?
We are very happy with our system. It's Tyler Technologies, Infinite Visions. We purchased that program back in 2008, and we've been using it, and actually over the last probably 3 or 4 years, we've actually been digging deep and starting to use the system the way it should be. you know, how all those financial software programs or any software program that, you know, they have all the bells and whistles, but you first got to get in there and do what you got to do to get work done. And so we've been implementing all the different aspects of it. So we're not in a big yank to want to transition again because it's not fun. But we will if we have to, when we have to. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Is there a financial incentive to opting in before it's mandatory?
Well, we don't know, because if it's made mandatory, I don't know if they will, by 2020, if they will still have the funding to pay for you to opt in.
That's why I asked.
Right. If you opt in for the start of this coming July or this following July 1st, it is paid for. That's the financial incentive. So keep it posted.
What's the name of the company that won the
Power School.
Power School?
Power School is the company that came out with this e-finance software. They purchased the financial software about 9 months ago from another corporation. So they're new in the financial software business.
But they've been around.
But
I'm always
Power
worried
School,
that these companies go out of business in 4 years and
right.
we have no support, and now then we're
Right.
looking for another.
And I'm just concerned because the state is the one managing all of this, and just want to make sure that they can get the first schools in there okay and not have it be a total blow up.
Well, the state has a pretty good IT department too. I mean, I suppose if there was a bit of software that you could tweak, instead people could tweak, it'd be good. But those are decisions that are beyond us.
We've had some experiences over the last couple of months with new software that the state is putting in place, and that's why I'm concerned. So we will just wait.
Will they send somebody to tweak it, or if there's a problem, the state will support that, their software?
No, I don't believe so. I believe that the state will offer the program, and then once it's in your facility, then you have to work with the software
It's
company.
not the state software, they're just
No,
telling you which
they're
software
just telling you which
buy.
software to use.
Oh, so they're not installing.
No, they're not installing it, but they're managing the whole process.
I mean, they have a pretty big IT department in state government for Vermont, for a small state.
You're talking the state of Vermont, we're talking AOE, Agency of Education.
Yeah.
So
it's not necessarily the same.
Yeah.
I was surprised to hear the comment about the IT department being good, because that was certainly not my experience when I worked with the state. So
Well,
I
I didn't
wondered
say
if
they were
something
good.
meant to that. I don't think so. Yeah,
I said I was.
Roll the camera back.
Yeah. I just knew a couple of people that work for them that are just self-educated and brilliant, and they can fix anything, and they're working for the state, but it doesn't matter because AOE is separate from whatever agency this group works for. So it's not streamlining on the state
Well,
level.
I was the Agency of Human Services, so it's a huge, they did a terrible job.
So I'll keep you updated on that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is on the health insurance plans, VHI health insurance. So the new plans were rolled out on January 1st of 2018, and the actual transition of the 42,000 lives that are covered through that health insurance plan, the transition was smooth, moving on to the health insurance plans. I don't know if anybody is aware, but there is an issue going around the state where some school districts are having a horrific time right now with the third-party administrator that they contracted with to handle the HRA part of the health insurance plan. And the company that they were dealing with is called Future Planning. And they overextended their reach with what they could offer, and because they made multiple promises that they couldn't keep, they ended up canceling all the contracts they had, which was the majority of the state school districts.
85%.
85% of the school districts. We, on the other hand, went with the other company called Health Equity. So this is not affecting Maple Run School District in any way, shape, or form. We are running smoothly. Health Equity is working wonderfully. We haven't had, I think we've had a few single incidents where an employee may have had, a question or two or what, but it's going very well. So I just wanted to let everybody know that the issues that's out there are not our issues. And it's not a VHI issue, it's actually the third-party administrator that is the one at fault. And each school district contracts with the third-party administrator that they personally choose, they individually choose. And so it wasn't VHI assigning third-party administrators.
So I asked Martha to brief the board on this because I got an email from the VSBA saying that all your school districts should contact your district, your attorney to find out how you're going to deal with this through collective bargaining. So I immediately got Kevin and got Martha, and it's like, what's going on?
Because some collective bargaining had things like what they call a donut hole, where the employee pays the first X number of dollars, the employer pays the next number of dollars, then the employee pays the last number of dollars, those kinds of situations. And when Kathy and I interviewed with the two third-party administrators that we were considering, Future Planning made promises that they could customize anything that anybody negotiated they could deal with, they would be able to manage it. And when we talked to Health Equity, they said, we went down that route many, many years ago, and it was a disaster. We will never do it again. This is what we offer, and this is how we can manage it. And it fit within what we negotiated, although the support staff didn't get quite as, great a benefit because they don't have the debit card, because there is the first dollar piece to it. But we made the decision that, it wasn't worth the chance to take, so we went with Health Equity.
And do they support both HRA and HSAs?
Yes, both companies supported both. The HSAs are not an issue with the other districts that we're working with Future Planning. The software company that Future Planning was using has agreed to step in and try and clean up the mess and get people back on track. But it's going to take them about a month to do that, with the employees not having access to any kind of debit card or access to their HRA monies. It's not affecting their HSAs if they have them, but very few districts actually negotiated HSAs. So another plug for HSAs. So
the smart districts.
Yeah. So those school districts are dealing with a lot of headaches right now. VHI did have an emergency board meeting this afternoon, and VHI is going to come in and help with some of the situation with the employees not having access to funds. So.
Thank you for all the smart decisions you've made on this, as well as your accurate crystal ball gazing.
I don't know how it was just, when you sit and you talk to somebody across the room, and, it's kind of, both Kathy and I, when we got out of there, we're like, boy, I don't think so. It was just a judgment call we made, and
An interesting point is that just for sake of information, I looked up how many people chose HSA, how many chose HRA. Mm-hmm. It's about 70% chose HSA.
70% took HSA.
Of our employees.
Which is what the association didn't want at all, right?
Exactly.
70%.
Exactly.
We only had one person who chose platinum. No one chose gold. The bulk of people chose gold CDHP.
Yeah.
Right.
And there were some people who chose silver CDHP.
It's actually more than I thought.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it'll be more next year.
Yeah. I think, if I were a lot of the people who chose HRA only had it as an option.
Because they got older children or something that...
Yeah, they had circumstances where it didn't work, an HSA wouldn't work for them. So, I guess that's it for me.
That's enough? Thank you, Martha. Any other questions for Martha before we let her off the hook? No? All right. Let's see, what are we going to do next month? Agenda items for future meetings, item 9.
Can we get an update on, is it called conscious sedation? That's medication, you know that, right? Conscious discipline. And how it's doing? Remember we got that early on in the year?
And we will talk to administrative council about when a good time would be for that. We can definitely do that. I think it would be a great thing to do. 2 things that are definite for June. There's going to be a presentation from Vermont, who's coming and talking about a study that we're involved with them, which you'll probably see some publicity on before that June meeting. But they want to come and talk to us. And Sean's also going to talk a little about a curriculum update before he passes it on to Mona on July 1st.
Yeah, next month we're in, May we're in Fair. This month we're in Fairfield.
Yeah, I'm talking about the first June meeting.
Okay.
That will be.
And then right after our Fairfield meeting, we're going to have a little open Q&A with people who show up at Fairfield. And, okay. Anything else?
You didn't send an email to Julie, because I will if you hadn't. Just
No.
saying that we are, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Let's see, so that brings us to a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing administrator contract. And we've already decided that belongs in executive session, so we would invite Dr. Dirk, and that's it. Look for a motion for that. So moved. Thank you, Mike.
Second.
Thanks, Sally. Any discussion on going to executive session? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we're in executive session and it's 1 VSA 313.